Welcome to our very first podcast episode of Pain to Purpose. Today, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming Virginie Aflalo. Virginie is the founder of Wellness by V, Wealthy Resets, author of Autism Beyond the Spectrum by the Thinking Moms Revolution, mother of two, and last but not least, the kindest, most loving rock star homeopath you will meet. Virginie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's really a pleasure to have you. For those who know me, know that Virginie is on my speed dial. She is my personal homeopath. I think I haven't gone to a doctor in many years, me or my children, because Virginie is my go-to.
Thank you.
You are
I love to hear that.
So talented, so amazing, so knowledgeable.
Thank you.
A real healer. So let's start by telling our audience and explaining a little bit about homeopathy. What is it? How does it work? And then we'll go into the deeper stuff.
Okay, well, homeopathy, first off, is not a new healing modality. It's been around for over 250 years. But I would say it's more popular in Europe than it is here in North America. And the basic principle of homeopathy is like cures like. This means that whatever makes you sick can also cure you. I'll give you an example. When you are peeling an onion, the thing that is most likely to happen is that you're going to have, teary eyes, maybe you're going to sneeze, itchy eyes as well. Well, if someone comes to me with those very same symptoms, and I give them the homeopathy minute dose of the onion, chances are the symptoms are going to stop quite efficiently and quickly. And so if you apply this to all the different substances that we can find, whether it's in the mineral kingdom, which all the minerals, the vegetal, which is the plants and the flowers, or the animal kingdoms, then you have an array of remedies that will address a multitude of symptoms. And what homeopathy really, really bases itself on as well is the details of the symptoms. You really have to study what is happening, whether it's on a physical, on an emotional, or on a mental sphere. We look at everything before we decide on the remedy. So that's really in a
nutshell.
I
love it. And you've told me before that there are over 5,000 possible homeopathic remedies. Is it?
Yeah, it's 8,000 remedies, I think, something like that. But active remedies, 4,500, something like around those. Yeah, so there's a lot of options and remedies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the way that just to explain how do we know what remedy does what is that over the years we've put what we called provers, which are volunteers who are in good health, meaning not taking any medication or not experiencing anything, and we've given them the substances to try in a dose that is not dangerous over a certain period, and to journal what they're experiencing. And so those become the symptoms we base ourselves on when somebody comes to see us with those symptoms, not feeling well with those similar symptoms. So we have hundreds of thousands of millions of volunteers that have journaled over the years to give us such specific symptoms that we can base ourselves from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I come to you with a specific issue, the amount of questions, right, that you need an answer to, it's like, and it goes from physical symptoms to emotional symptoms. And that's something also I want our audience to know, is that it helps heal, physical ailments, but I think emotional as well.
Yes. I think that emotional is probably, for me, it doesn't get old. For me, I see it day in and day out how incredibly powerful this healing modality can be on the mental and the emotional. And surely enough, when we're a good emotional and mental state, usually the physical follows.
100%.
So yes, absolutely.
Right, 100%. And last little question, technical question, which I know the answer to, but I want everybody to know, are there any side effects to homeopathy?
So there's no such thing as a side effect, but I always say this, when you're cleaning your closet, you have to mess it up a little bit. You have to take everything out, sort it out, and then put it back in the way that you want. It's a bit the same. So there might be at some point when you take a homeopathy remedy, what we call a healing aggravation. But so you're going to feel something that feels like an aggravation, but it doesn't last long. It's really a step back to go really 10 steps forward.
100%. It's interesting that you use that analogy, because in my own work as a therapist, that's exactly the analogy I use. I tell my clients, like, you need to take everything out of the closet, and it looks like a huge mess in the bedroom.
Yes.
And you're like, what is this mess? I didn't even know this was all in the closet. But that's how you can, remove what needs to be removed and reorganize, and then have a beautiful, clean, organized closet.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So the goal of having you here today is really for you to tell everybody your story, which I know a little bit about, and I find so immensely inspiring and beautiful and touching.
Thank you.
So let's start from the beginning. How did you learn about homeopathy?
I had no idea homeopathy existed, to be honest with you. I met my husband, and about a year after we got married, we decided that we wanted to start a family, and surely enough, it wasn't happening, and I wasn't sure why, and so I started investigating, and then over the next 5 years, we basically went around the world, tried every possible, treatment or, thing, diet, Chinese supplement, everything that was out there. Went to Spain and got this fish supplements from this healer. I mean, I was willing to do anything to have a baby. And then did IVF, IUI, everything, like medical-wise, we also tried everything. And there was nothing really wrong with neither my husband nor myself. It was just, we were what we call in the gray zone. And at some point, I had just had a failed IVF and was waiting for my second attempt at an IVF. IVF is in vitro fertilization, for those who don't know. And my sister-in-law called me and said, I know this woman, she's a homeopath. You tell her your story, and she finds a remedy, and she helps you with whatever that's not going your way,
You're Virginie.
Yeah, meaning, yes. And so I said, I want to see that woman. I was so desperate. It's been 5 years at that point. And so I went in, and I thought I was going to talk about, technical stuff like, my ovary, my this, my that, I'm ovulating. And surely enough, she didn't even ask any question. She knew that we wanted to have a baby, but she went straight for, tell me about your story, about your life. And then I started speaking about something that I don't necessarily share a lot, because it's really a very difficult part of my story. I lost a brother about 20 years ago to a car accident. He was very young, and so it was very traumatic for me. And because I'm the type of person who does not express necessarily how I feel, I just decided that I was strong, and I didn't express any of the grief or the sadness or the anger or any of the emotions that I was really deep down inside feeling, but just suppressing. that she decided that this was the hot point, or the hot button, if I can say it that way. And so she gave me a remedy, and she warned me. She said, this remedy is going to make you grief, and you're going to cry, and you're going to dream, and you're going to go through a roller coaster of emotions, and you need to go through this if you want to be able to become pregnant. And at first, I couldn't believe that this and this was related. But I said, okay, I'll take the remedy, and I did. And I swear, for 2 months, that was probably the hardest 2 months, one of the hardest episodes of my life, where I was just like, I realized how much pain and how much sadness I had been suppressing around that episode. And I think I cried for 2 months straight.
Oh my God.
It was really very intense. But then I went to see her in October, and at the beginning of January, I had a positive test.
Wow.
Yeah, I was pregnant. So I took 2 rounds of the remedy. And she told me the second round when I went to see her, she's like, you're going to be pregnant. I was like, oh, please don't say this. I've been hoping anybody who's been through infertility for so long knows that it's such a difficult roller coaster ride where you have your hopes high the first part of the cycle, and then it just crumbles down, and it's just like
the disappointment is
harsh. It's very difficult. And then living in a society where people ask questions and want to know, and you have to deal with that, was just very difficult. So for me, it was like, please don't tell.
Yeah.
But she was right.
And 2 months later, you were pregnant.
I was pregnant with my son, and I had a beautiful pregnancy. And then my son was born, the most beautiful, perfect boy. I don't say this because he's mine, but honestly, even the nurses would go by and was like, that's a 10. It was really very special. And I guess the honeymoon of having a child and discovering all of this lasted almost 2 years. But as we gotten closer to the second birthday, first of all, at 16 months, we went for our routine visit to the doctor. And we were late on a few vaccines. So the doctor said, it doesn't matter. We'll do this one on this leg, which had 3 viruses. This one on this leg, which had 3 viruses, plus the chicken pox. So the same day, he received 7 viruses, vaccines. The 12 hours later, we were on a plane to Florida, because the doctor said, it doesn't matter, it's safe, no problem, you can take the plane and go on vacation. And so we did. And I say this because we were not home when this whole nightmare happened. And his fever started and kept rising and rising and rising. I was staying at my friend's house at the time, and we were so scared that we decided to go to the hospital, the Joe DiMaggio Hospital in Florida, actually. And we stayed there for a full week with an uncontrollable fever, even Tylenol and Advil, which at the time I didn't know is not a good thing to give after a vaccine, were not helping. And then the same way that this fever came, this fever went. But when he woke up from this fever, over the course of a few months, he lost all his milestones, all of them. He had words, he lost the words. He had eye contact, he lost his eye contact. He was imitating, he was no longer imitating. He was pointing, he was no longer pointing. Is a very, very important milestone in a baby, toddler age group. And I just had a sick baby. He was always sick with strep throat and ear infection, and he wasn't speaking. Wow. So that honeymoon period kind of went down, and I started to worry, what's wrong with my baby? What's wrong with my baby? And then one day I was at a birthday party. I will never forget that. Because once you open that Pandora box, it's over. And this mom, who was a good friend, came up to me in front of everybody and said, you know, he has issues. You need to have him evaluated.
Wow.
And that was like, whew.
That must have felt.
Yeah, I
like
went,
a
we finished it, like I brushed it off for the remaining of the birthday. Then I went into the car and I remember I started crying and I told my husband, do I need to worry? Do you feel the same? I feel like she's right. And that's it. That was the beginning of my journey of trying to understand what was happening.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was very hard because if I thought that trying to have a baby was my challenge, well, I had no idea what was in store for me and my husband.
Wow.
I will say this. I say me because my husband was never really involved in everything that we did in the physical sense. But he has been my rock and my support from day one. Emotionally, financially, he was working like a madman to be able to afford all the things that, you know, we needed to do. So somebody had to work because I quit my job to be able to help him. Because at age 3.5, we met with doctors. He was still not speaking. He had words, but he was still not having any conversation. He had a few words. He didn't have any eye contact. And so when we met with the doctors, they basically told us, we can't give you any, official diagnosis, but there are delays. He will probably never have a meaningful conversation. He will never say, I love you. He will, have issues with his muscle tone and his ability to do things physically because he really had a hard time with that. And socially, we don't know where it's going to go since he can't speak. So it was really like
a shock.
Such a shock. So much a shock that I was like, they don't know what they're talking about. It's not possible.
Okay.
Impossible. Impossible that I'm going through this now after everything I went through to have him. It's, and so, and this is where maybe I'll talk about what happened inside.
Yes.
A part of me kind of like died when I was going through all this because I just lost faith in everything and just became the most anxious, most, how can I say, angry. I wasn't sleeping. I remember I would go downstairs and just light a candle because I am very spiritual and pray to God and say, no, it's not happening. Please, it's not happening. It's not. I had not started anything yet. I was just like in shock, really in shock. And at some point, I don't know what happened. I think I went to see a speech therapist who looked at me and said, don't get your hopes high. He's not going to speak. I can tell you. And I remember coming out of that interview, like with her, sitting on the stairs of the hospital and just crying and crying. And I could see people going up and down, and I was just, and he was next to me sitting and waiting. And it was just, I was just like, and then I stopped crying and I said, I'm going to come back with him and I'm going to prove her wrong. And something shifted then.
There was like a switch, like a breakthrough moment.
Yeah. I'm going to have to take care of myself if I need to be strong for him. So that was the first thing that I realized. I couldn't take care of him if I was in a bad place.
100%.
And at the time I was told, there is a homeopath. So here comes homeopathy again. Who takes care of the moms. What do you mean the moms? The moms who have children with challenges.
Wow.
He will take care of you. And he has changed my life, him and homeopathy.
So I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
in that in that moment or at that time, because your story is very straightforward. You went on the plane, you land in Florida, he goes into the hospital with fever for a week, and he's a different child, okay? Did you lose faith in the medical system or lose trust in the medical system?
No, it was not. I didn't put two and two together. In fact, what was the coup de grâce, what I call the coup de grâce, is that I went and he got the booster shot. I had not put two and two together.
Okay.
I didn't realize that this, you go in and you have complete faith
Yeah.
in what the medical system and the doctor is telling you. And, I was there doing by the book everything that I was told to do without questioning. Yes, I did question, but I was reassured. So I said, okay. It was only later when I started doing all the evaluation and all of that, and that I started to, I had that really breakthrough moment where I said, I'm going to prove her wrong and I'm going to work on it. And I went to Google University because nobody was giving me answers. So I said, let me go online and see what, and I kept stumbling, is how you say, on a doctor who gave like methylcobalamin, which is B12 vitamin, and that would trigger speech in children who weren't verbal.
Wow.
And he was in the US, so I told my husband, I need to go see this guy. And he was like, you're not serious. You don't even know who he is. I'm like,
this is Dr.
His name is Dr. Newbrander.
Okay, I thought you were talking about he's huge now. I forgot his name. It's Samishep, but he's huge, and you had told me that you had seen him years ago. What's his name?
Rossignol?
No.
I went to see quite a few.
Okay, because everyone needs to know, and I don't even know if you know that I know this, but because Virginie and I have family in common.
Yes.
I've known you for a while.
Yes.
The amount of investment, commitment, the amount of things you did for your son, I have never seen a mother do this much in my life. Like, you would travel for weeks at a time to the US, pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, try all sorts of treatments to give your son back what he had.
My motto on those stairs was no stone unturned. I want, when he's 20, which he is soon.
Wow.
Crazy.
Wow.
I want to tell myself that I did not leave one stone unturned, that I gave everything that I could. And when I say I mean me and my husband, obviously. We gave everything that we could to this child to have everything that he can, to have a independent, like, can you say, like,
autonomy?
To be independent, to be autonomous,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So anything that I could, with the help of, our families, parents on both sides, uncles, nieces, nephews, everyone was so supportive. It takes a village. I cannot say it enough.
Yeah.
Because I had my daughter in the middle of all this, and she was a blessing.
Wow.
And so my parents don't live here with me, so I had to find a support system. And so his family and my husband's family and our circle of friends were absolutely amazing at giving us that support, which helped, allowed me to do everything that I was, meant to do.
So let's backtrack. You start doing your research online, and
I go see Dr. Newbrander, and Dr. Newbrander says, we need to do an MTHFR mutation gene test. I'm like, what is this?
In
Never
English?
heard of that. Yeah. Today, it's the hottest thing online.
Okay.
You talk about gene mutation or epigenetics, and
Right.
everybody talks about that.
Yeah.
But back then was really not very well known. And so he says, we want to test for this genetic test, because if he is, if he has an MTHFR mutation gene, this would explain why he reacted to the vaccine.
Okay.
And surely enough, we found out that he did. It's really a gene that most of the people from the Mediterranean region have dormant, but from one generation to the next, it could just be triggered by the environment or by something that's going to wake it up. And so what happens is that when you have an MTHFR mutation gene, roughly, I'm not going to go in details, your ability to detoxify or your garbage truck, internal garbage truck is compromised. It doesn't work well.
Wow.
So you're not able to convert certain things in order to fight viruses properly. So obviously, the garbage truck was not working in his case. He received 7 vaccines on that day. It was like an elephant stepped all over his immune system. And that's why he reacted like that.
Okay. So
That's
that's
the explanation that we came, now we know that more and more it's out there that this is what happens in a lot of the cases. It doesn't mean that vaccine will affect everyone because not everybody have that weakness.
You've always told me it's not no vaccines, it's not, it's how many and for whom, meaning...
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Exactly.
I think that not every child has the capacity to take so many, and the calendar is not what we had 20, 30, even 10 years is close to what we have today. And so if you look at the rise in so many different issues, you just go and speak to a teacher and ask about the demographic of their classrooms 20 years ago versus now. Just ask a teacher. I think it's the best place to see. And you will hear that it's two worlds. When there was one case of maybe ADD, one case of allergy or asthma, and today it's the reverse.
The majority.
If you find a healthy child, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's very alarming. And then I'm going to say, we call them the 4 epidemic A's. There's asthma, allergy, ADHD, and autism. These 4 are on
the rise.
On the rise.
Okay.
Very alarming.
Very alarming, yeah.
And I'm not saying it's just a vaccine. I think that it's...
environmental.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's so many toxic chemicals everywhere.
Yeah. And
Right. Yeah.
So it's not just that, but it's part of, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you start with the homeopathy with Danielle.
Well, I start with homeopathy with Danielle and with myself. And so as I'm healing, and the healing for me was more accepting. I couldn't accept that this had happened to me. I was hiding. If you ask my friends, my dear, dear friends, for 10 years, I disappeared from the surface of this earth.
Wow.
Obviously, I was very busy traveling with my son, and he was my priority, and my daughter also. But it was on purpose that I did that. I didn't want anybody to see my son. I couldn't accept that this had happened to us, and I was hiding from everyone. And so I had to make peace with that, and I had to shift. And with Jerry, who is my homeopath for the longest time now, and my mentor, and really has changed my life, we really had to peel one layer after the next to understand why I was feeling this way and how I could heal. And this is where I find that a lot of people don't know about homeopathy, is that it's therapy. It's therapeutic.
Yeah.
Especially if you do it like that, where you peel one layer after another, and with each layer, the remedy that is chosen will propel you into the next layer that needs to be addressed. If you're in therapy, you do the same work.
Yeah.
It's just that little pellet that you take kind of fast forwards the work.
Yeah.
And often, people say, well, do you recommend to be in therapy while doing homeopathy? I'm for sure you should.
I mean,
Anybody.
100%. And I totally agree with what you just said. And I like every time we have a call, a consultation, I end up crying and we end up unpacking, and it's like a therapy session, literally, because you ask questions that bring up whatever needs to be faced or healed. And then once, one remedy takes its course, then we address the next layer.
Right.
And like you said, the spot or the point that needed to be addressed for you was acceptance. So that's also something, in homeopathy, where you need to, as a homeopath, spot, like what I've noticed, working with you, is you spot exactly what the trigger is. Is it grief? Is it acceptance? Is it guilt? Like, what is shame? What is it? And that can take time. And I, I always feel like I said, like I'm in a therapy session with you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I love, a lot of the time I'll say that when I do this kind of work, the person will come and has no idea that they might be led to really having to open up and go so deep and be really in the trenches sometimes and talk about really heavy stuff. But when we're able to go there, I find that it's the work starts at that moment. It doesn't even, it's not when you take the remedy.
Yeah.
It's when you start speaking about it. And then the remedy comes in, and if it's well chosen, I guess,
it propels
really,
you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It's with COVID, I find that everything that's emotional, mental, anxiety, depression, anger, frustration, all these emotions were brought to the surface on a exponential level because people had to deal with confinement and so a lot of the young adults felt like they were walking with like a cloud over their head constantly and didn't know how to handle it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's when I find that not just with me, but in general, people they didn't want to go towards the med right away. They wanted to try more of a holistic approach, and I'm so happy about that because that's when people started to learn or to know about homeopathy and it being able to help with that.
Amazing.
That's at that time that I decided to start my Instagram account because I was
really?
home and I was not doing, much. I was working, but it wasn't, And so I started sharing on homeopathy and all the benefits of homeopathy, and I was so surprised to see that people wanted to learn more and know more about it.
Yeah. COVID was, I think, a time where a lot of things came to the surface. There was nowhere to run. There was not many possible distractions anymore.
Right.
People had to face themselves, right?
Very good point.
Like people always tell me, your business must have been booming during COVID. And I'm like, yeah, it took off for sure. Sadly, I'm not happy to hear that people went through tough times, but at the same time, you that's where you clean out what needs to be cleaned out, from the metaphorical closet.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to the story. Let's fast forward to when you started seeing homeopathy really helping you and your son. You know what? Let's actually talk about him today. Is he speaking?
Yes, very much so.
I know he is. For our audience, I had the honor and the pleasure to meet Daniel so many times, and he is the most beautiful, amazing boy.
Yeah, he's what blew us away is that for so many years he had words, and then from words it became sentences as we cleaned him from, with all the therapies and all the homotoxicology, homeopathy, classical homeopathy, seeds, name it, really did all that we could. Special diet for, up until last year, my son did not eat gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, corn, and many other foods that he was intolerant to, because we knew that if he ate those, it would trigger inflammation. And when there's inflammation, it impacts your central nervous system, it impacts your cognition, it impacts so much that people don't necessarily realize. So we had to really be strict, and I was adamant. It was, and he didn't know anything else. He knew that this is his diet, and there's no other choice. And so, sorry.
No, I want to take a second. I think this is really important. Can you explain to the audience about inflammation, how the gut affects, the rest of the body, not just physically, emotionally, mentally, all of that?
It's, I think inflammation is the enemy of each and every one of us.
Yeah.
When we have inflammation in our body, it will affect mental, physical, emotional, everything. And one of the things is, like, we know now, back then we didn't know as much, but now there's so many research and studies that there are sensors that are connecting the gut and the brain, not only in one direction, but in both. So it's like those lighthouses that tell you if there's for the boat to see, but you can see the boat arriving. It's the same thing. It's like there are lighthouses for each other, where one will communicate certain things and the other one will communicate other things. If your gut is not in a good place, your mental will not be in a good place, and vice versa. If you're not feeling well, if you're feeling anxious, chances are you're going to experience things in the gut. So for us, it was very important from the get-go. And that's from Dr. Newbrander in New York when we went that first time, who gave us that MTHFR mutation gene, also said he needs to be on a special diet for 3 months before I can actually see him. And so I knew that I wanted to continue and be on those methylcobalamin shots, which is the B12 vitamin. So I said, okay, we're going to wean him out of, which was very hard.
Actually, I think I really want to share my personal experience in this area, where I went through a really, really tough patch in my life. I was going through divorce. I was going through a lot. The divorce was just one part of it, but there was a lot going on in my life. And I literally developed, I don't like to use labels on myself or on anyone, but I literally developed what they call IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, where I had, serious issues with my gut.
I remember.
You remember? And which already in itself is crazy to think that when you undergo a lot of stress, you can actually develop a physical chronic disease. Like, that's already important to understand. And I remember coming to you and telling you about it. We worked through it. Within a few months and a few remedies, it was gone. It was gone. This was like chronic and extreme, and it was gone with homeopathy. Once in a blue moon, when I undergo a lot of stress, I'll get like a tiny bit of flare up. Right away, I'll take the remedy, and it doesn't go any further than that. But I felt it was important for people to know.
And I like that you said that it was a few months, because a lot of the time, and this is important, people would think that because it's natural, it's going to be instant that they're going to feel better. But really, if the body takes that long to get to a stage where they're in, distress or inflammatory state, you're going to have to wait a bit to undo everything that brought your body to that state.
Exactly.
So you need to give a little bit of time. And I appreciate it because you did.
Right.
You went with the process. You knew that it was going to take a little bit of time, but you could see like progress.
Yeah.
Progress until you really felt a difference.
Yeah, 100%. And that's also something, like, we're so used to just popping a pill to numb the pain or suppress it or whatever. And homeopathy is healing. It's not just a band-aid solution. It's here to heal your body and bring it back to homeostasis, dare I say?
In a state of balance.
State of balance,
Your
right?
vital force, which is what keeps us alive, is brought back to a state of balance. And when that happens, you feel good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Your vital force. I love it.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's so important what you're saying, that you can't undo years of something in the making. This is something I tell my clients, you know, in terms of like therapy. You know, a client comes to me, they're 20, 30, 40 years old, 50 years old. Like, how long will this take? You know, how long will it take to heal this? And I'm like, you've been in this emotional state for 30, 40 years, or however many years. I'm not going to say it's going to take 30 more years to undo, but you got to be patient. You got to do the inner work. You know what I mean? Like, it's a process. It's a journey. And I think that's really important for people to understand in any
I
case.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very good point.
Right.
All this to say that for all the years that we thought he wasn't here because he wasn't speaking, when he started speaking, it was insane. He would say, you know, Mom, you remember in 2007 when we were at my parents'
Wow.
house in the summer, and you were wearing this, and Mommy said that, and you said that, and this is how I felt, and
Wow.
a memory with details and expressing how he
Wow.
felt. It was just mind-blowing.
It was all recorded and it was all coming
Everything.
out. Wow.
To this day, he'll say, and then he has a visual photography of the calendar over years.
Oh, I know. Second time he saw me, he said, May 17th is your birthday.
Yeah.
And it was a Tuesday last year, and it was a Wednesday the year before.
Yeah, he knows what day it's going to fall on, and so he has that exceptional memory that
Right.
we know is a gift.
Yeah.
So today he just, you know, he's 19 and he wants everything like everyone. Obviously, our journey is not over. We still have challenges, and we're still working, and we're still doing, but on a different level, because the big milestones, which were language and, you know, in terms of his muscle tone, he's learning how to do Krav Maga.
Wow.
And has a coach and trains
Wow.
2 to 3 times a week. And now he's like much taller than me. And the other day I was watching him, he was washing the dishes, and I was watching him, and I noticed his shoulder are wider than
Right.
before. So he's become like so, you know, I'm going to say this to any parent that is in the trenches now, is going through le dépistage, finding out whether there is a diagnosis or whether something's wrong with their child. First of all, don't give up. Don't take what you are told as the end of the journey, but rather as the beginning of your journey.
I love
Anything is possible.
Yeah.
You really have to find that strength within you, that you're going to find answers. If you look, you're going to find answers. I can't predict how much of a progress each child is going to do, but there's always room for progress. There's always room for more than what you're told. And, you know, like he'll tell me, Mommy, let's go see Vanessa, that speech therapist. We should go see Vanessa and show her how, you know, I have very good conversation, and, you know, because he remembers
Wow.
me crying that day on those stairs.
Wow.
He was a baby. No toddler. Isn't that incredible?
That's incredible. That's incredible.
I mean, for me, it's everything.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's so inspiring.
He's changed me. I first of all, accepting. I was a ballet dancer before I even, got married. And so by definition, being the center of attention when I'm on a stage was the thing when you're a dancer. And yet when I had that whole situation happen to me, I wanted to hide, and I didn't want to be the center of attention. I didn't want to be the one that people talk about, or my son to be, oh look, or that's why I was hiding. And so I had to relearn to accept and to be okay with that. That this is, he's beautiful the way he is, no matter what his progress will be, that he is who he is, and he will bring what he will bring to each and every one that meets him on a different level. But, I think that as a parent is the hardest thing that I've had to work on personally.
For you?
Yeah.
For you. So I'm going to ask you a really tough question, because obviously, having difficulty getting pregnant, and then, the experience with your son that led you to become a homeopath, that led you to become, you told me in the past, another person, right? If you could go back in time, it's a tough question. Would you change anything?
Oh, it's tough. Listen, I'll say this. No parent whatsoever wants to be given this trajectory for their child.
Yeah.
We do everything that we can, so that our children are happy, are healthy, are thriving, are successful, are happy in their marriage later on, have healthy children, and so on and so forth. You want to know that you leave this earth and have everything in place so that they're, at the best of their potential, I'm going to say. So would I change anything? I don't think I would change a thing regarding my trajectory as a person. And I think that I could have not become who I am today if it wasn't for Danielle's story. But selfishly, I would have preferred that my son didn't have to go through all of that he's gone through. So it's tricky. It's a hard one. It really is.
It is.
I am a better person.
Okay.
I don't think I would have had the depth, and I don't say this to sound in any way conceited, but the depth and to be as authentic as I am today, and to want to be around people who have that authenticity or that level of authenticity. I can't be bothered with shallow, just, surface kind of relationship, friendship, all of that. That's, and I think I'm proud of that. I really am. It's not given to everyone.
100%. 100%. And I can attest that you are an extremely authentic, genuine person.
Thank you.
And I think my whole objective of doing this podcast is really for people to see that whatever challenge you're going through, and it's not to minimize the pain you went through or the challenges that he had to experience, but whatever challenge is set your way, it's really there to propel you. It's like a springboard that sort of propels you into being your most authentic self and to really aligning with your true purpose. And we have the choice to, go on that springboard and jump into that version of ourselves, or sometimes we stick on the springboard and we're like, why am I in this situation? But at the end of the day, that's really what it's here for, in my opinion.
It's funny you mentioned that, because as you were saying, I was remembering we sat with like a room full of doctors telling us, how his trajectory was going to be anything but you know, the one that we had hope or want for him. And I was 8 months, almost 9 months, going to give birth any day to my daughter. And so this was really the time where I had that shift in the mindset. And I gave birth to my daughter, and then I said, okay, there's enough of feeling sorry for yourself. You got to get up now, and you got to go do what you got to go do with this boy. And so I remember having that conversation with myself, because we have these conversations with ourselves, and then just grabbing the car seat on one hand and grabbing my son, who had very low muscle tone, so you know, walking was a bit difficult, and sweating because I was breastfeeding. So if anybody knows, when you're breastfeeding, you get la montée, you know, the
hot flashes,
and all that, and then just going from one appointment to the next, one therapy to the next with both of them, and just like being so focused and being so driven. And I didn't realize, I was just on a mission. I was like, okay, from being powerless, helpless, anxious, angry, I went from that to being really like, okay, let's do this, you know? Let's go. We're gonna make this happen. And then for 10 years, I didn't look back. 10 years.
Wow.
I didn't travel. I didn't do anything. I went back to school. That's what I did, to study.
To study homeopathy?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's all I did. I was like, I might as well.
Might as well.
But that was so empowering. And I think that we all have that inside of us. We just have to find the button to turn it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a remedy.
And a remedy.
Because I took a remedy, and that was life-changing for me.
I agree. Yeah.
Really, really, that's when the turning point happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, the remedy propels you 100%.
100%.
I've experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Last question before we wrap up.
It's so fun.
I know. I love having you here. What do you want to share with everyone? What's the biggest lesson here for you? I mean, we've spoken a lot about lessons and the wisdom of all of this, but what would be your advice or lesson?
Well, I think really be kind to yourself. I know this is something that might sound said and overrated, but really it's throughout a process where there are some changes that need to be done, or for anybody that's going through. I was so hard on myself for so long. I was judging myself, and I was beating myself up for so long for being the way that I was with this situation, for not being more gutsy, for not being. But then, you know, it didn't serve me or him. And this leads me to the second thing, is that, you know, if we don't feel good and if we don't take care of ourselves, we cannot take care of anybody else. It starts really with us. You know, that very, very common thing that we say, put your mask before you put your child's mask. It's so true. If you're not breathing properly, how can you take care of the rest?
100%.
You know?
So be kind and compassionate and patient with yourself while you're going through it.
Yeah.
100%.
No, for sure. And you know, today I see it with everything that I do, you know, whether it's homeopathy or now with Wealthy, my new branch where we offer, you know, all these resets. It was because I felt that, you know, it's not just one thing. It's like everything is linked together.
Yeah.
You know, it's about how you feel. It's about how you sleep. It's about how you eat. It's about the lifestyle that you decide to adopt.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. That's going to allow you to be better, and by being better, obviously, you know, being able to offer more to the ones around you.
Yeah, 100%. If you're in a good place, you can offer more value to everyone around you.
I have one more thing that I would say.
Yes, go for it.
You know, it doesn't matter how old you are to find your true purpose.
Oh, I love that.
I think
I love
that age is just a number.
Mm.
You have to follow your gut feeling and not be afraid, because you don't know if your second or your third career is really your true calling. I was in fashion marketing. I was not
That's so interesting.
in what I am today. But this is by far my true calling.
Mm-hmm.
I am so passionate about what I do. I am so, when I'm able to make someone better or make a difference in someone's life,
It lights you up.
it just,
Lights you
exactly,
up.
it really
Yeah.
does. It really
Yeah.
does. It fuels me to do more and to want to get better at it and
Yeah.
to give back even more, you know?
It's
It
like you
really
work
is.
hard, but it doesn't feel like hard work. It
Yeah.
feels and like it's like a burst of energy or fulfillment or whatever.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and oh, to stimulate your brain keeps you young.
Yeah.
You know, to
100%.
keep like wanting to be smart and learn
Yeah.
and expand your knowledge keeps you young,
Yeah.
I think.
You're
It's-
talking as if you're old. You look 20.
I love you.
Amazing. I love that. Wow, I love that.
So thank you
Amazing.
so much for having me. It's
Thank
just such-
you. It's such an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your story. It's not an easy one. Thank you for your authenticity and your vulnerability. It really, and I'm sure it will inspire so many people and encourage them to turn towards natural remedies and homeopathy and, you know, the holistic route, which I believe in very strongly.
And listen to their gut.
To listen to their gut, but it has to be a clean one, right?
I agree.
To get the right signals, right?
I agree
Totally.
100%.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.